the meeting of February 3rd, 2021 to order. I do have one thing to read from the Governor's Proclamation. It is pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Municipal Building Committee is being conducted by a remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by turning into Westborough TV. If I could, I will just ask for a motion to accept the minutes of the January 6, 2021 meeting.
I'll make the motion now, but I got a couple of questions, or a couple of, maybe one error on it, I think.
Okay, Dex, do you want to go with those, and then we can probably have a second to that?
Okay, on the paragraph that starts with Forbes Building, Mr. Collins provided, Mr. Innes stated RTU 123 discussion. So next to the last line in that paragraph says that the cabinet heater at the entranceway on Parking Street side, I think that should be Parkman Street side, runs constantly.
Okay.
Just call it a Scrivener's error, and Enza can fix it. It shouldn't be a problem. Other than that, I'm good.
Did you have that, Enza?
Yes, thank you.
And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that correction.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Peter O'Neill. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. We have Dexter.
Aye.
Peter O'Neill.
Yes.
Jim Stewart.
Aye.
Is Ian on? Nothing from Ian. And I with me.
John Ennis with 5-star.
And okay, so we're all set on that. Okay, if we could, I'll jump ahead to Fred so we can get going on his meetings today.
Sure, thank you. I sent out an email, which was actually a forward of an email I had sent to the manager on Monday morning. Brian, I didn't include you on that specifically. It was to the Municipal Building Committee. So, but we can go over those items if you'd like. It's up to the chair. I'm not sure exactly how you want me to do this.
Yeah, proceed whichever way you want, Fred.
Fred,
Sure.
I can call your email up on the screen if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd probably be a great idea, Peter.
Keep going.
So, having gone through the Forbes, and I apologize this wasn't done sooner, but it takes quite a while. So I I went through the entire ADA report and itemized all 155 pages where they fell, whether they were corrected, completed, still kind of out there in the middle of nowhere, if the variance was granted. So I went through and itemized 100% of that. It's attached to the email somewhere, albeit you can look at that at your leisure. It's kind of all encompassing. I'd rather go back, Peter, if we can, just go back to the email.
Certainly.
That's the actual Excel report. So there's four major areas, if you will, if you want to call them that I still see as our potential to be addressed. The first one, I've talked to the facilities director. He and I are in agreement that if certain issues come up, the town will be on the liable basically for them. And some of those items, and they're kind of itemized, is the toilet paper holder. There's some contention on how those toilet paper holders actually work, that you could actually have one of the toilet paper rolls, if you will, at a higher place in the dispenser. So we think that actually may be compliant. But if we really get a complaint, Jim's agreed that we could look at replacing those with a different type of dispenser. There was the numbering on the doors, that's completely I wouldn't say completely out of whack. There's many doors that in the report aren't either in the right location, height, whatever. There's a variety of issues with the placement of the room numbering. Again, we don't think at this point, the big thing are the bathrooms. We don't want people going to the wrong bathroom, obviously, so those are okay. Most of the public spaces, the fire room, those type of rooms are okay. It's the individual rooms, so the stairwells, they reported that the signs may not be at the right place. Rather than whole hog change all those, again, we'll leave those. There's nothing in the building code that I recall that actually has to label some of these rooms. We were cited mostly because if a room number was not in the right location, we got cited for it. But rather than trying to rip all those signs down and relocate them, we've agreed that if it becomes an issue, we'll address that. And there's a couple other ones. There's thresholds. There's a few thresholds that might have been off by a quarter, eighth of a quarter of an inch. Some of those are strictly the floor. There may be, for instance, I can recall one is a storage room that's actually used as an office for the maintenance personnel now. There's a difference between the storage room itself and the main floor, so that depending on how you measure it, the threshold would be out of compliance. So again, Mr. Stewart and myself have agreed that if it becomes a complaint or an issue, that we'd have to do something to rectify those. I think there was a couple that would have to have the threshold ground down or something because there might be a lip on it. So we've basically taken those. There's one other one that I can recall. The ramp entering, not the police side, but the other side, the common entrance, if you will, beyond the police side, near the library. There's a cross, what I want to say, there's a cross slope that's not correct. If we had to, we can extend, there's a little bit of a wall out there. We can actually extend the wall out so people wouldn't be able to get to the cross slope. It'd be almost impossible to correct that situation otherwise, because the front walk is different than the ramp, and there's just not a great transition there. But I don't think it presents a problem. People can kind of go around that cross slope without having to go over it. So that addresses number one. And if anybody has any questions as we go, please don't hesitate to ask. And again, Jim Stewart can comment on these if he cares to. Sorry.
No, Fred, I'd say, I think you're covering it fine, everything we've discussed.
5-Star has agreed to correct a grab bar. I suspect sometime during the meeting, they'll comment on that. I don't know if that correction's actually taken place yet. That's in the half bath. It's a new bathroom. Peter, Jim, myself, and 5-Star through Jonathan looked at that, and Matt, we've all agreed that that would be corrected. Again, they can comment on that.
Yes, that's correct, Fred. When we do actually plan to get it done this Friday.
Okay, great. So that's pretty straightforward. That remains on the main punch list for all of us until that's taken care of. And Brian is not aware of this quite yet because he hasn't seen this, obviously. There are 3 doors that the board is aware of that potentially could have openers, automatic door openers installed to correct a deficiency in the door, if you will, and Brian went over those. There are actually 4 other doors that didn't rise to any kind of a review, if you will, that have that same potential, that if there's a complaint, we'd have to address them. 2 of them are actually in the police department. I don't know that there's really anything to do with those, again, until it rises to the occasion that becomes a problem, then we may have to address those. But I didn't want to not bring those to anybody's attention. And it's possible I may have missed another one somewhere, but that's what I see as 3A. B, the locker rooms. Brian has maintained that the locker rooms themselves, the lockers, let me be more specific. We were cited that both in the women's and men's locker rooms, that we don't, for their benches, the accessibility of the locker, I think we were cited for several different things on the lockers themselves as not being quote unquote accessible. Brian's maintained and I don't think you'll dispute this, that because they're not public access, which is true, they're not public access, so they're not under AAB, they're under ADA, they're under the federal regulation. And his take on that, why we haven't addressed it to date, is that he doesn't believe they have to be accessible. Again, my take on that is if we did have a complaint from somebody in that department, we would have to make some kind of accommodation for the lockers. I don't see any way around that. So I'll leave that at that. I don't, it is what it is. And then lastly, under 3C is the water fountains. Brian, in his response to that, has maintained that they are compliant. I maintain they're not. And basically, you have to have some kind of, the water fountain would have to go down between 0 and 27 inches. Otherwise, somebody with a walking cane could conceivably not know the water fountain was there and walk into them. Rightfully so, the water fountains aren't in the main thoroughfare, if you will, but that doesn't mean, they're near, one of them's near the bathrooms between the men's and women's room. So is it possible somebody could walk into them? Yes, in my opinion, it is. I'm not sure if there may be a fix for that. I'm not really positive. That may be something Jim and I will have to investigate. And then the handrails. My understanding on the handrails, Kevin was scheduled to come out here at some point. I don't know if he did, Kevin Lippy, if I'm saying that wrong, but he may or may not have. Brian can update you on those. So those are the 4, if you will, main things that I see that are kind of out there and that the town will ultimately be responsible for one way or another.
So Fred, this is Ian. On 3C, I think I've seen other places. Is there the potential to put, something on the floor, blocks, metal, something? Because I think what you're saying is someone coming in with a cane, that they're going to be going on the floor, not up the wall. But is there something that would outline on the floor that we could bolt in or whatever that would, kind of outline the how much the water fountain protrudes from the wall?
Well, yeah, Ian, I think that the simple answer is yes. I think we can do something on the floor. I'm kind of looking out for the maintenance staff too. I don't know that we want to, unless we enclose that area, and then we might have other issues. I think it's a maintenance issue too. If we put something on the floor, then you can't easily clean the floor. So yes, that may be a possibility, but one of the fountains, the bottom of it projects closer to the floor, but it's not within that 27 inches. The other one is intended to be higher so that if you're on a wheelchair walk or whatever, that you could actually kind of roll up to it. So I don't know that you can do anything there. I don't recall if the report really had a solution, whether you could actually put a sheet metal, like an extension down to the bigger water fountain. So yes, I think there's some kind of solution here, and I'm just not positive what it would be. Even though what you suggested may be the solution.
Great, thanks, Fred.
Brian, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, as Fred said, it's the first time I've been seeing it. I do know that some of the doors that Fred might be referring to, I do recall that there was some violations cited because of thicknesses of existing wall construction,
Right.
which created a condition of non-compliance. So it's really not something that was design related. It has to do more with the construction of the existing building. It's the wall thicknesses that we needed to put a door into, such as stairwells. Your fire rated stairwells have some pretty thick walls that the stairs are constructed from. And we were just replacing doors in those wall thicknesses. So it's just inherent to the building. It's not really something that had a design solution. So I had just suggested that an automatic opener would bring you into compliance, but I wasn't advocating for doing that just because it was, a lot of them are in areas of police facility, restricted access, existing construction. So there's there might be reasons why compliance is not able to be achieved. It's not new construction that we're dealing with here. It's existing buildings for conditions for a lot of these. And I can go into a little bit further on the stairwells because Kevin was there and I can report on that a little later.
Okay. Fred, you have anything else you need to add to this?
No, I'm not in disagreement with what Brian said. That's why I don't really even know how to say it, but some of these that they're not a problem until they're a problem. I don't know if there's a better way to say that, but I don't know that I'd proactively go out and put in 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever it may be, or 7 door openers for the sake of just putting them in. Some of them, as Brian, most of our space, public space is different. So employees would have to be the ones that, for the most part, are going through these doors. That's not to say that if we had an issue with an employee, if we couldn't make an accommodation, we need to make the correction. So that the bottom line is, if we do have an issue with an employee, we do have to look at the situation and see what the correction is. So don't get me wrong on that point. But I don't know that going out and making these changes is warranted. Let me just leave it at that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this? Okay, hearing none. I guess Fred, you're all set then?
Yeah, I'll stay on for a while, but when I have to jump off, I'll just jump off.
Okay, I guess I'll turn it over to Peter then.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, while Fred's here, Brian did have a presentation regarding the handrails. Should we get into that now while Fred's available?
I think that's probably appropriate, yes.
You okay, Brian? I will share the screen with your report.
Yeah, if you can put the analysis up first. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, I have them all here. You tell me what screen you want me to show and I will do that.
I'm going to try to explain something that is very hard to explain, but I'm going to try to do it in a way that is kind of simplified and everybody can hopefully understand where I'm going and what I'm doing. At the last meeting, we talked about applying for a variance for the existing stairwells having to do with the handrail conditions. The only way that I could really submit a variance is if I had firsthand account of what actually the conditions were that were in non-compliance. We did get the report, and the report noted that there were some handrail deficiencies. I hadn't ever gone and verified that. I just took it for face value on the report. And then at one time, Heary produced a report which showed non-compliance in certain areas, but not in all areas. But I didn't want to rely on that report either if I was the one having to sign off on a variance request and be the applicant. I thought I needed a little bit more information on what actual conditions were before I would have to certify a variance request. So I sent Kevin to the Forbes building to do an analysis of the existing stairway and to try to document what deficiencies were there so we could certify those and be responsible for them in a variance request. So there are 4 stairwells, and this is where it gets confusing, a little bit confusing, that because when you're talking about these stairwells, they traverse 4 floors, and there's a left handrail and a right handrail. There's landings, there's a lot of conditions within those stairs, which we needed to try to get to the bottom of what was going on. So if you're just looking at what's on the screen now, it says existing stair hall front north in the upper left. So this is just the stairwell in the front of the building, being the West Main Street side, on the north side. So it's on the West Main Street elevation side to the north. Now we have measurement locations for the first floor for the first to second landing, from the second floor. You know, the second column is whether it's the left side of the stair or the right side of the stair. Which handrail are we talking about? And there are certain conditions that we needed to verify. One is height of handrail. One is handrail clearance, which is the one that has the yeses in it. Handrail clearance is you need a distance between the handrail and the guardrail to actually grasp the handrail. And it's a 1.5 inch requirement that's clear, so you can get a hand or a glove or a fire department glove or something in that distance from clear from the handrail to the, whether it's the handrail to the guardrail or the handrail to the wall. There has to be 1.5 inches. The next column is poster extension. These are handicapped or handrail extensions, whether they're extending from the bottom landing or the top landing or extending at posts. And then the last one is top of rail at the end post. So there we have a condition that we have between 34 and 36 inches. And then the last column is he took some notes on what he observed. So what he's highlighted in yellow are areas of deficiencies to the code. So you can see that just in the first run on that stair, we have compliance in certain areas, but we have non-compliance in select areas. So it's not that the entire rail doesn't meet code, but for some instance, at the bottom riser on the left side, it goes to 33.5, and 34 to 36 is our requirement. But that same rail, when you get up to the top riser, it's at 34. So these are really slight variances that we're talking about here, slight conditions of 1/2 inch, where it's not consistent. While the handrail clearance is fine at that condition, you go down to the next run from the second floor, and it goes to 1 1/8 inches, where we have the first no in the handrail clearance. And instead of 1.5 inches, we're at 1 1/8 inches. As I said, some of these conditions are not because the handrail bows, it's because the wall bows. So we have conditions where the wall might be bowing and infringing on your 1.5 inch clearance. So at the top and bottom of the stairwell, it's fine, but because the wall bows out, it infringes by a little bit on the clearance. So this kind of, now Peter, if you want to just scroll down, I can show, this is just one stair. If you go to the next page, now we're at the front stair hall south. It's not the same stair, but we have similar conditions. And it's kind of all over the map where we're finding non-compliance. And for the most part, we're finding compliance. And where we're not finding compliance, it's by 1/2 inch or less on the front stair hall south. Keep scrolling down. You can see where the yellow shows up. That's where we're finding a little bit of non-compliance. Again, it's just in small increments of 1 inch. Nothing really major. When we get to, just go back to what you had. Okay, that's rear stair south.
Oops, I'm sorry, Brian. Which one? I apologize.
A little more, a little down, a little more. Okay, there. If you go to the bottom of the page, just above, it says 2/3 landing, transitions into existing guardrail at 42 inches. That's what's happening at the top of the stair. As the handrail comes to the top of the stair, it transitions to the last column on that page that's in yellow, 42 inches. The handrails come to the top of the stairs, all the way at the top landing. They transition from a handrail to a guardrail. It's kind of an interesting design that they've implemented, but it comes to the top of the stair and goes from a 34-inch dimension. It turns up vertically and then horizontally to the sidewall. So the handrail contorts itself to become the guardrail. In doing that, it brings it out of compliance. It brings it into compliance for a guardrail height, but it brings it out of compliance for a handrail height. So it's just the way it was designed and the way it was built. And it's been in this condition since 1999, or been in this condition for 20 plus years. So that's just a condition at those front stairs. And now we've looked at the 2 rear stairs. That's what this sheet is, existing stair hall rear south. We're finding handrail clearances are good. Handrail heights are off by 1/2 inch in certain conditions. It's the left rail, not the right rail. And when you're talking about extensions, extensions are required extensions when you get to the bottom of the stair for a handrail extension. That's required to be 24 inches. On these stairs in the rear, we're finding that they meet the requirements. We had modified those stairs, those handrails at the bottom of stairs on the south, but the existing stair hall rear north, you go down a little bit further, Peter, you can see that we have a 23-inch and a 22-inch extension. Where code requires 24 inches, but this is where at the bottom of the handrail at those. So we're off by 1 inch, 2 inches. It's not a major deviation, but those are the conditions that we're looking to get a variance for. So any questions on just our investigative work?
Yeah, Brian, I have one, Brian. Alan, if I may. Yeah, on the one where you mentioned the transition from a handrail to a guardrail at the top, where it went to 42 inches. What's the significance of that? If it's a guardrail, it's a guardrail. I mean, at the top of the landing where there's a fence so that you don't drop over into the next floor, it's not a handrail. It doesn't act as a handrail. It is a guardrail. So why is that an issue?
Well, at that condition, you're still required to have both. You're required to have a handrail extension.
Even though there's no stairs there, there's nothing that you can do other than drop off the world if it wasn't there?
You have to have the guardrail. And if one way to think about it, Dexter, is if you're walking down the stairs, you're holding the handrail, but you also have a guardrail that's beside the rail. So that same design should be extended to the topmost landing. The handrail would then extend and stop, but the guardrail would still turn and create conditions of safety for a guardrail.
So you're saying there's a guardrail along all the stairwells as well as a handrail?
Yes, and what we've done in the renovation design, we extended the heights of the guardrails on those stairs. So we did do that. We did not change the condition of the handrails. Well, what we did do is we cut off the newel posts, we extended the newel posts higher, we created a higher guardrail dimension. We did all that without touching the handrail. But when you got to the top of the stairs, the handrail transitions higher to be the guardrail. So it's not something that would be a compliant design today.
Wow, okay, thank you.
So the next thing I sent you, Peter, was a variance request. We've taken that data, we've put it back into this application for a variance. We kind of patterned it off of the one that we had already submitted. So a lot of this information in the first few pages is kind of repeat documentation. All of that data is data that we had from the former application. We had to change some of the wording just because we're just reapplying just for handrails at this point, but a lot of this data is still applicable. Just it states who you are and what variances you're requesting, and you know, cost of the building, blah, 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 blah. So we'll get to the next page, Peter, and you'll see 2, 3, 4, and 5. Well, in the past documentation, there was the number 1, so this is a continuation sheet, but we're actually asking for a variance for 5 conditions. But with those 5 conditions, they're in multiple locations, but they still come down to just 5 basic things we're asking for. And one has to do with the 1.5-inch clearance. Some has to do with the 34 to 36 inch heights. But if you look on number 5 there, it says that's the CMR condition, the ADA condition that we're asking for a variance for. The next column, it says location, and it says multiple locations. So existing handrail is less than 34 inches between top of handrail and top of floor landing nosing. 34 to 38 required. So we're at 33.5 in a lot of these conditions. So that's just one of the 5 items, but it's all over the place. It's in 3 of the 4 stairwells. So if you go to the next page, and scroll out, so in the upper left are the 5 conditions, and in those 2 rear stairwells, we point to specifically where we found those deficiencies within that stairwell. So the one to the left, the rear stair south, we're just asking for condition 5 at those 3 locations for condition 5. So if the board was looking at this, they'd have some way to visually see where it is those conditions occur. I don't know if this makes our condition better or worse, but we wanted to be at least truthful as to where it was and how often it occurs, even though it's the same condition. It's just 1/2 inch out of compliance. It's not along the entire rail, but it's at those conditions at the rail. And we go visually for the next 4 pages. Yeah, you can click on that one, Peter. So on this floor, there's nothing in the rear stairs. It's only in the front stairs on this floor. Same 5 conditions, but we're just identifying where they're located. And these have to do with, I'll take the note in the bottom right for this. It's the 24 inches. So this is note 1. So it's a handrail extension. So the actual is we don't have an extension here at this condition, and we're required to have 24 inches. So for that condition, they might grant you a variance, they may not. I don't know, because at this condition, we have no handrail extension, but it's right at the bottom of the stairs, so we would actually be blocking some passage dimensioning at that bottom stair. That handrail at that condition just dies into the newel post. So if it was extended 24 inches into that landing, we'd be reducing the landing width by 24 inches. So it's an existing condition. It's something that is part of the building. It's inherent to the way it was constructed. So I'm hoping they give you a variance, but the note just above that we just looked at, the handrail to the right coming down the stairs, it doesn't extend 24 inches, it extends actually 21 inches. So that's the note above. So so the handrail extends, but only on one side, and on the other side, it just dives into the newel post. So it's, and on the right side, it's at 33.5 at that condition instead of 34. So, I think we're now confident that we have the right information. It's now, what's the best way to try to convey this to get a variance request? And it was confusing to us to try to even contemplate how to do it, and we think this accomplishes it, but that's why we're presenting it to you to see if it makes sense or if it's just actually a little confusing. So the next page, Peter, goes up to the next floor. Again, there's no rear stair at this condition. When you get up to the second floor, there's only the 2 front stairs that extend up to this floor. So there's just parts and pieces that are still the same 5 items, though. It's just not any different than we've talked about before. It's just showing it on this floor.
Brian, if I could interrupt just a minute before Fred leaves. I just want to, I'm interested, Fred, in what your take on this is from your professional perspective.
Thanks, Dexter. So just a couple minor clarifications. One, Brian, you had mentioned that the entire handrail is not off. That may or may not be true because Kevin measured the top and bottom rises. It's possible that somewhere in the middle there too, you could, albeit the deviation is not much. Like you said, if you get 33.5, it's possible somewhere in the mid handrail, you could also have a deviation. It may not be at 34. So I don't know that I necessarily make that statement that it's not, that the whole handrail may not be off, or it may be off, but the deviation wouldn't be significant, assuming that 33.5 is correct. It shouldn't deviate much, but it's possible the mid rail could be off too. That's just a minor point. And the only other thing is the extensions, yes, 100% correct. Albeit the returns are interesting. I may not like it, but on the interior newel post, it's possible those returns are actually code acceptable. So I would stay with and see what the board has to say. I've always thought you've had to kind of wrap that return around the handrail if it presents a, you don't necessarily have to extend it out into the walkway because then it presents a tripping hazard and it, you can get hung up on it. So you don't have to extend it out the 1 foot. But how you return into the newel post, you've had those on there and I'd leave them on there where the arrow is, right. So those might actually be code compliant. I'd be curious to know how the board would rule on those. The one on the inside wall, yes, those have to extend a certain amount out because those don't present the same tripping hazard and they're not in the walking surface per se. No, otherwise, I think, what Kevin and Brian have presented is good. Very good, actually.
Thanks, Fred.
Sure.
So the next page, Peter, just goes up to the uppermost floor. Again, we only have the 2 stairways in the front. Same conditions, same 5. This is the floor, though, that's showing how the handrail does contort itself to be the guardrail at the top of the stairs. So this would be some cutting and welding, extending the handrail height at least the 24 inches. And yeah, Fred, we could turn that 24 inches to be 90 degrees to the stairwell, but we still need that extension on the handrail independent of the guardrail. And those are happening at the top.
Yeah, so
the handrail along the wall is compliant. The handrail along the wall gives you what you need at the top of the stairs. The handrail at the newel post doesn't.
If I may just interject, so Dex, so that goes to your point, is that, or your question earlier, is that at the bottom of the top of each landing, you're supposed to have some way to extend those handrails out or return them or bring them along. So you can't just transition from 34 to 38 inches and then just kind of gooseneck it up to 42 and consider that part of that extension, if you will. You can't do that. You have to make an independent extension or return or something from the handrail. You can't just go into the guardrail. And it's interesting that only happened in that one particular area. Surprised it didn't actually come up in other areas. So we're lucky in that regard. We only deviate in one spot, I guess.
Yeah, it's only at the topmost landing in both stairs. It's the original design that we didn't deviate from. So the next page is the letter that we received from the town. I think this is the one that Christie wrote for the last variance. And, you know, I still think it applies, but the question I had is, do we want to update it for this variance with a new date? I think or we could just keep this same letter. I think it just says that we're doing it on behalf of the owner. So I'm comfortable if you want us to use this letter, or if you want to give us another one. That's.
Christie, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'll do either. It's simple, you know, to just print out a new letter with a new date. So if you want to do that.
I don't think any of the information changes, so
I don't think
have to
so.
put this letter into the variance request. And I think that kind of completes what we're planning on submitting. We wanted to show it to you first and see if you had any questions, modifications before we send it off. We have to send this out to Worcester again, to the advocacy group within your community, independent living center. We did that last time.
Brian, if I may, the only question I'd have, and I think the presentation was great, thank you for doing all that. So if I'm on the board, the one question I think that might come up is, why didn't we apply for this originally? And be okay to throw me under the bus on that response if you need to.
Well, I don't know if you also want to write a letter, Fred. We can also add another letter to this if you want to just, you know, we have to submit this to you as part of our application process.
Right.
So they know it's going to you, but I don't know if you want to, you could always add a letter saying that you're in support of this. It may be something that the board would then read and know that we're not just doing it independent of your input.
Yeah, I can do that. I just don't know how, if that question comes up, how we answer that.
We were waiting to get more documentation, I guess.
Yeah, that's a reasonable response. I don't think I'd put it anywhere, but I'd just be ready to answer that question should that committee ask you that. That's the only thing I have as a comment.
I think it makes sense that, you know, based on the measurements being so close, that it makes sense that, you know, we as a town wanted to do our own independent measuring prior to applying for the variance.
All right, so we can have Christie do a new letter up with a new date on it, and then Fred can add his letter in.
I think that makes sense, Al.
I'll get something to Brian.
Okay. Is that Brian okay?
Yeah, and I think this is a little, as you can see, it's almost better to be its own application because it's very intricate and trying to get very technical with all of these different stair conditions. The other one had 17 items, but they were kind of just limited to one item per condition. This has 5 conditions over 4 stairwells. So I think trying to add this to the last variance would have made the last variance very complicated and a little bit more difficult to understand.
And Brian,
this reads it as itself.
Al, this is Ian. Can I just make a
Yes, go ahead, Ian.
Yes, sorry. And again, I am by no means an expert on this, but and maybe you had it here, but I'm wondering if, because when I look at this on the surface and all the red and on the maps and pointing stuff out at different points, it looks like it's, as you said, complex and there's a ton of things there. But I'm wondering if there's a letter, whether it's a cover letter or something in the end that just really highlights that while you'll see a lot of things here, they're really the same items in many spots, and that, because a lot of, when we looked at them, it's 33.5 versus 34. It's not, huge differences, and it's consistent being an old building. And whether that would help or not, again, I don't know what the board will say, but I guess when I look at it at first glance, if I was on the board, which I'm glad I'm not, it would come across as very like, wow, this is way too much for us to grant a variance for. So I guess my question is there any way to do something that just, in a cover letter highlights, and then maybe you've already done it. I guess that's my question. I don't know.
Well, we try to be transparent, and that's, we could have just not included all these diagrams and just said we only have 5 conditions we want a variance for. The 5 conditions are, instead of a 24-inch extension, we want a variance to go to 21 inches. I guess that's our worst case scenario. Well, our worst case scenario actually is a 0. But so are we asking for a variance just to go to 0 instead of 24? Well, that only happens once. It only is at 21 inches, 2 locations, 22 inches at a couple more locations. So that's where it became really complicated for us. Try to boil this down as to, we need to show them where these occur. Yeah, the 24 inches we understand is the requirement, but are we asking to go to 0 in all cases? No. We have extensions, but they're not to 24. If you take that just one instance, eliminate all the maps and just say, take this chart, can we get a variance for everything that's in yellow? And I don't know if that's enough information for them to really know the conditions at the stairs, where they are, how it's located. But we have all this documentation. It'd be nice to find a way to get this simplified, but I can understand the concern with the complexity, but I think we're being accurate by what we're asking. The deviations are really small, though. I don't want to make this seem like these stairwells are a public hazard. They're not. Walking up and down, the difference between 33.5 and 34 inches is imperceptible if you're actually the public walking up and down the stairs. They still have handrails. 33.5 to 34, you're not going to know the difference. It's only because I just told you, is now you're aware of it. So I think the 33.5 to 34 is going to be an easy one for them to get their hands around. The 21 to 24 versus 24, I think that's easy for them to get their hand around. 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches, I think those are just what we're asking for, a modified relief. We have a couple oddballs where it goes up to 42, where we talked about the upper landings. I think they should be looking at those independently, and I think the mapping gives them ability to do that. But I think I'm encouraged. I'm pretty positive about these other 1/2 inch discrepancies. I think that's what the variance requests are for.
Alan, can I pipe in here?
Go ahead, Dex.
With Christie, Brian, did you help with the original letter that went out from the town? Did you help Christie with that letter?
Who's that question to? Is that question to me?
Yeah. Did the original letter, the letter that went with the original application for the variances to the AAB, did you assist Christie in writing that letter?
No, we just requested a letter from the town.
Well, okay. Christie, if you don't mind, can I ask Brian to help you draft a letter that is going to suffice for this next application for variances?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think Fred and I just did this one, just obviously it's pretty simple, but, happy to have more information.
Well, Brian, you've had the experience in doing this not only for Westborough, but for other communities that you've been in, I'm sure. So perhaps your expertise in how to word this would be helpful.
Well, I think that letter that you're referring to is all we needed, that from Christie. The letter from Christie just gives me the authority on behalf of the town to submit the application. I think the other
my letter was just this paragraph. The other stuff was written by Brian.
Okay, well, so then, Alan, do we need a motion to authorize this to go forward?
Yeah, we can take a vote on that. As we said initially, we're going to have Christie resubmit the letter with a different date on it, and Fred's going to add a letter to it. If you think we need a motion, that's fine.
Well,
we have a motion for anybody to have the letter submitted.
Yeah, I think where we were the responsible building committee, if you will, under Christie's direction, I think a letter from, a motion from us and so recorded in our minutes would be sufficient. So I would move that we proceed forthwith with the request for the variances that Brian has outlined previously.
A motion from Dexter. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Peter can second.
Ian O'Neill. Ian O'Neill. Ian Johnson second. Do we have any comments or questions? No comments, questions. So I'll do a roll call vote. Dexter?
Aye.
Peter O'Neill?
Yes.
Jim Stewart?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Al Gordon, yes. So it's unanimous.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dexter, for doing that.
When we get those letters, we'll submit these. It does take a couple months, and anticipate this to take a couple months before we hear something back.
Okay, I think we've wrapped this up. You want to go back to Peter?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Back to the report itself, if you'd like. We move down to item 3. I'm going to ask for some input from Jonathan Ennis from 5 Star on the updated punch list that we did a walkthrough on January 12th. Jonathan Ennis, Matt Rex from 5 Star, another representative from the bonding company also was with the group, along with Fred Leonardo, Jim Stewart, and myself. We went through the punch list, which was this list. I updated it. I sent it out to 5 Star and Fred and Jim based on the results of the walkthrough of the 12th. So Jonathan, if you like, you can tell us what you have scheduled ahead for completing some of the open items.
So I did actually respond to your update on January 19th. So about a week after our walkthrough, there was some discrepancies. I haven't actually seen your newly updated one, so I can't specifically comment on that right now. But I know that there was a couple final things. I think there was some extra keys that were going to be dropped off. We had planned to do them a little sooner, but our help got caught up. So this Friday, when they go to do the handrail, the extra keys will be dropped off. And I believe if there was one other item that will also be taken care of, I'd have to pull it up. But besides that, there was the training, which we've been getting really close to finalizing the last days. We had the electrical set up this week, but due to the weather, we're actually rescheduling that now. We've set up one control day for the HVAC system that will happen, I believe, on the 24th. And we proposed the actual HVAC training to be the first week of March, which would take care of the training that Adams owes. So we're, I would say, a week or two away from having the final dates set in stone. As long as no weather issues come up, we should have the training completely done. And I believe other than that, we're in good shape as far as documents go. We have submitted a couple of the training videos for approval, and once they are officially approved, we'll provide the USB drives. And with that being said, I don't have much more an update than that. Once I see your updated punch list from my response, I'll have more. And as far as the commissioning log, I know that we did send in another update on January 6th, and we've yet to see anything back. And there is a few items that need the town's response, and that was actually on the update that was sent 12/2 as well, and we still didn't get a response back for that.
Jonathan, I'm just curious on the CX report. There's many items on there. I think there's probably 3 or 4. I don't have the report right in front of me that you had sent back that you were going to take care of items on the week of 1/11. I haven't. Do you have any update on that? Because 1/11 is come and gone, and I see it's still. I haven't seen any update on that. Were those items taken care of?
As far as I know, yes. And when we get the response back from the town, Adams and AJ will provide and confirm in their final response.
Well, this was besides the. I think there was 4 items you wanted a response from the town. This was besides that. There were items that you had said that were going to be corrected on the week of 1/11.
Yes, I understand. And I'm saying that we've responded twice since and got no response back. So Adams and AJ haven't provided another response yet. And I can send an email confirming that the work is done, but we are still looking for the other responses back so they can do another formal response.
I understand that, but I guess it's 2 separate items. I know you're waiting for a town response on a few items, but there are items that you're saying that have been that you believe have been taken care of, but you really don't know right now if they have. And I'm just curious, because there was quite a things going to be taken care of the week of 1/11. Now we're into February, and I haven't seen an updated report. And it doesn't even have to be an update. You could just send out an email saying, or they can, that they were on site and they took care of these items. And at this time, you don't have any information on that.
Yes, so like I said, they have told me that they've sent guys out and taken care of it. I'll get an official confirmation for you, and I'll send an email.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim, anything with respect to training and maintenance stock?
So the last meeting, we said that, said that we did receive the paint. That has come in, it's been verified, and that's all set. I haven't seen any additional attic stock from Energy as of yet. And Jonathan, I think you reported that the ceiling tiles had been delivered. Is that true?
Yes. We brought the 2 boxes the day of the walkthrough. Actually, there was 3 boxes.
Okay.
So kind of transmittal as well.
Okay, so as long as we have the transmittal on that, and those are the items I was waiting for. So we're still waiting for additional items from Energy, then, correct?
Yes, and they were going to bring that during training. So when we reschedule the final dates, they'll bring their final items.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else regarding those items? 1 through 6? 3A, 1 through 6? Okay. Jim, did you want to speak about the carport roof drains at this time?
Sure. So I've had Intercity Electric out, who came and did a evaluation of the roof. We're talking about heating the bottom, and it may be 2 feet, it might be 3 feet, with coils along to keep the, any snow that would potentially slide down that roof would be melted off and go into a gutter. I've had Fox Gutter out also. They've been out on several occasions. It's a little bit more complicated. The way that, was talked about doing because the building is so long, I believe it's 85 feet or 80 feet long. You can't just have one central downspout. it won't work. You have to basically have one in each corner. So they've been out on several occasions taking measurements. To this time, I have not received the official quote from them or from Inner City on what this was going to cost. I did send out some follow-up emails late last week, and then there to one, and then again on Monday to the other, and haven't received a response from them yet. But we are working on it. It's going to be a little bit more involved with the needing to put 4 downspouts. We had thought maybe we could have both ends come to the middle on each side of the building, and then bring that to the center of the carport, and then down underground and into the catch basins. But because of the pitch that has to be from the edge of the roof to the center, it would be down below head height before you get to where it would tie into the downspout going into the ground. So that wasn't going to work. We tried a couple of different things with them, and then they came back and remeasured and were putting together some type of a plan for us to have them on 4 corners. And it's just going to be a little bit more involved in tying into the catch basins, because now we're 85 feet, we're on the other side of the building away. So we're still waiting on a response from Fox and Inner City. And unfortunately, I don't know what's taking so long. This is stuff that, we've been working on. They were here right after the last building committee meeting, and I'm a little frustrated that I seem to have either no response from gutter companies, or when they do come out, I still don't have any information for you as far as pricing.
Right, Jim, once you get these prices, and if they give you any plans on how they're going to do it, can you meet again with Fryer to find out from them if that's still something that they can follow through with?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that too. And then also too, Inner City, on a side note, is because the chief had asked about some lighting underneath there. It's gonna be a separate quote for the lighting, because I didn't know how we would. We'd have to discuss whether or not that was something that the town was going to do or not, and so they are going to provide that also. And I'm really hoping. I talked to or sent an email to George on Monday, and I'm really hoping to hear from him this week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's nothing else on item 3, I'll move down to item 4, which is the change order log, the look-ahead changes in the budget. Really, I have them attached. There's really no change from the last time we met. You did receive a copy of this in your email. Same items, just a different date. The budget's been updated with any invoices to include a review from the town accountant's office through the Munis report as of the 22nd of January, as noted here in the bottom left corner of the last page. So this budget reflects encumbered money, invoices paid with respect to how the OPM is tracking it, and to the best of the OPM's ability, based on reports from the town accountant's office as well. Next item, if there's nothing there, item 5, it's kind of an open general discussion, if there's any.
Maybe this might be the right time. Can we discuss the email that was sent out, I believe it was yesterday, in regards to the testing done on the HVAC units?
We can, I would like to speak with Adam, AJ Roberto, about that. I can't actually speak on the report myself. That is beyond me as far as the testing goes. I know that they did see some odd spikes on one of the days, and they are suggesting that they do testing again come spring when there's a heavier load on.
Jonathan, should National Grid be brought in on this also?
I'm not sure if they do their own testing. I just know that the company that they called, it was another third party. I'm sure that it wouldn't hurt to have National Grid in on it. I just don't know how we would get them involved.
Well, I question on some of this, if National Grid would find this within their specs. If you look, at the report, there was one day or two instances on one day of I think it was a 10-day evaluation. Sorry if that time's off. Where there was a drop in power, it wasn't a spike in power, which you would think a drop in power wouldn't cause breakers, fuses to pop. And it was, 500 millisecond of a drop. I mean, it's literally less than a blink of an eye. And I just question, I would like to see National Grid's response, and I think that the report actually, said that they talked to National Grid about if that's an acceptable level or if that would cause issues in the building. Brian, I don't know if you had a chance to look at this report or if you've seen it. I don't know if you know anything about that type of thing, but in reading it, and I actually spoke with Wes about it. He was on site. We had some heating issues over the last few days that he had to come in and work on the 2 RTUs that shut down over the weekend, and we had no heat in the building Sunday and Monday. So, I questioned, if this is actually something that would cause it, and that's always been my feeling, that if we were having fluctuations that would be causing breakers to, fuses to pop, that, I'd be having issues with a lot more than just these RTU units in that building. But, I guess I'll leave that to the experts or electrical engineers or somebody to tell us that.
Al, I have a question on that.
Go ahead, Peter.
I would think most equipment is designed to take a slight fluctuation over a short period of time. You have a refrigerator that kicks on and you can hear the compressor kick on, and that means it's drawing down the voltage or amperage coming through the line, just a slight amount, but they're designed to, not blow their fuses. Boilers, when they turn on down in your cellar, or I have an ejector system on my sewer system here, and when that pump kicks on, it does, I won't say the lights flicker, but you can see that the lights do alter their brightness. To me, I don't know why we'd still be blowing fuses for that. I can't believe there isn't a design in there that allows for a small fluctuation, and we don't seem to be getting those answers. I don't know if the manufacturers have signed off on this kind of stuff. I find it hard to believe that every time. And the other thing my question was is when the fuses blow, is it when the cycle starts up, when the cycle shuts off? I mean, when you draw them originally, when we use our saws and you turn them on, other things, feel the pulse and the electricity. I'm just wondering why these units are acting like this. I also have 3-phase in my shop, and so I understand some of the 3-phase issues. But we have equipment that we run with 3-phase, and when we're running one big saw or blower or planer, it doesn't seem to affect, that equipment. So my question is, I think there's something, and I'm no engineer, but I think there's something else going on here. I mean, I'd just like to know some of that, whether there is a design issue.
Can I follow up on that, Alan?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dexter.
Yeah, and following up with what Peter said, I think engineer, I'm not an engineer either, but I think we need to get New England Electric or National Grid involved in it soon, so that they can follow it. And if they need to do some testing themselves, that they'll have a season to be able to get that testing and get some data behind them. I think they should be involved yesterday.
I agree with Dexter. I think that report should be submitted to the engineers from National Grid so they can review it and they can have their input into if it's actually their problem or if it's something with the installation in our building.
So is that Peter Collins to forward that to National Grid?
Well, I would ask Five Star and Adams, they've apparently had previous conversations with them. Can they get some input from who they spoke with and what they intend to do with it, along with any manufacturing, Johnson Controls or York? What are the fluctuations, acceptance, the tolerances, along with maybe some input from BVH, the electrical engineer, and the mechanical engineer who specified these units, along with the electrical supply system.
Right, Jonathan, can you supply that information to Peter?
Yes, if Peter could please provide a response, I can forward it back to Adams and AJ, so then they can forward it on to who they need to get the proper answer.
What do you want me to do, Jonathan? Provide you
I needed a response back to their report, please, asking what exactly you guys want them to do moving forward. They did provide their report, and we're just looking for something back for tracking purposes.
What do you want us to do with the report?
We provided the report to show the findings. You're asking for further information, so I'm just asking you to please put that in a response back so I can give that to Adams and AJ.
Well, I think we should grab the bull by the horns here, Peter. I think that report should be sent by the town to National Grid to get their expertise on the problem. We're not getting it resolved necessarily through Adams or Five Star, and then I'm not saying that they should have it. They've just provided the data. I think we need to the town needs to forward that data to National Grid to get some response from them to see if they want to do any independent testing themselves to identify the problem.
Well, the only thing is, Dexter, I don't believe there is a problem. I just think that this is, even with this report, I just don't think that these issues, that this occurrence that happened on December 26th is enough to cause any of those units to shut down. I think this is just something to divert from what the real problem is. That we have some issues with those RTUs, some electrical issues. I have my own opinions on why that's happening, but they're just my opinion. Just from what I've seen and people I've talked to, I just don't believe that. I would be happy. We can send this to National Grid, but I think that if we're doing that, we're saying, well, okay, we think there's a problem with your electricity, and I don't really think that the results from this test they did claimed that it shows that. I think that the fluctuation was so small for such a 500th of a millisecond long is enough to cause these units to shut down. And if they are, then I think that should come from either York, their engineers, or something like that, because I just don't feel like we'd be having problems with servers and all types of issues in that building. Lighting controls. When we had our training on lighting controls, they said that is very sensitive to power fluctuations, and I haven't had any problems with lighting. So I feel like this is just something that, when Adams has been working on these units, all the problems that we've had, this was just something that they tried, okay, let's test the power and make sure that it's okay. And, where there was a slight on one day, there was a, very, very slight drop for a very, very short time. That if they want to claim that that's the reason this is happening, then I think it should be on them to prove it. I don't think we need to prove it, because I don't believe it.
Well, we're not proving it, I don't think, Jim. I'm just saying because none of us are electrical engineers or know anything about the power system that's being supplied to the building, that we turn it to the supplier and ask Mass Electric, National Grid, for their professional opinion. Have their engineers take a look at it. So we've got some corroboration to either back what you're saying, Jim, or turn it back to Five Star and the plumbing and heating company and let Adams deal with it. But I think,
I think we can request them.
It's not going to cost us anything to go to Mass Electric.
Right, and I think that we can request that Adams do that, mainly because they're going to want to know all the specs on the units. They're going to, they're going to have to do some calculate. I'm sure they're going to want to know, everything about those units. And it's, I don't see where it's our responsibility to have to send that all to them for them to do it when quite frankly, the units are shutting down. And there's a reason for it, and I don't believe it's power. I believe that there's issues with both of the units, and it's a lot of time and man hour to sit and gather all this data that they're going to need. I mean, obviously the report shows that this happened, but they're going to want to know, all the specifications on the units. And I have a bunch of as-builts and OEMs. And, the technical data on these units, quite frankly, I don't have it, to send to them. So I think that we should put that back on either Five Star or Adams or on the project. I don't know what else to say about it. I just think it should be, it shouldn't be the town having to do this for them.
Right,
Well,
Jim.
okay, I don't necessarily agree with that, but Peter Collins, what's your professional take on this?
I believe if the contractor has a claim against electrical power and the fluctuations not being within tolerance of the units, they need to provide the data to show that, and to do that, they should seek all the data and information and bring it to the town. It seems like a deflection that the town suddenly has to go on a chase to find out if electricity is contaminated.
Peter, the report that was provided does show some odd activity, and that's what they're claiming. And they are saying because it was a short span of time and there's not the same load on the units as there is in the summer, that they believe another testing needs to be done. And they've provided all the data, and that's why we passed it forward.
Jonathan, it's a collection of data. How about getting an engineer's report on it? And the manufacturer provide a report on that data? And an electrical engineer.
We have, Peter, I'm not understanding though. They've provided a report, they did the analysis, and they didn't say that's 100% what is causing it, but they do believe there's a potential. And that they're saying at this point that needs to have more testing done during the hot season.
Did an engineer review it, Jonathan? Or just a technician collecting data?
Engineers to review.
A technician collected data. An engineer did not review it and analyze it.
Okay, so again, we've supported our side of the argument here, and we've sent it to the town for their review. And now you're just saying you want me to give it back and that you want more information. If you could please provide a response, then I will ask Adams to get what you're looking for.
What is the end game here, Jonathan? What are you claiming?
There wasn't a claim other than they did see activity that was funky as far as spikes, and that they think it needs to be looked at closer.
With the thought that that's tripping the fuses and the unit.
Well, actually, it wasn't spikes, Jonathan. It was a drop in power. It wasn't a spike in power. It was a drop in power for 500th of a 500 milliseconds. It was a drop in power.
Correct, and then it spiked back up to the normal rate that it was running at.
Then it went back to normal, right? It didn't spike. It went back to normal.
Okay. But you're saying they want to do another study once the cooling units are put into place?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we could be talking about May or June before this is done again, correct?
Yes, I would think that would be around the time, and we still did want to have an RTU discussion, and in that discussion would be the extended warranty.
Exactly. That was the next thing I was going to bring up is we're still waiting on the extension on that warranty in writing, correct?
We got it.
So they've set a report in, and they said they would be willing to discuss with the town all the details, and we have not got a date set from the town.
So they're willing to discuss it, but they have not granted it.
Yeah, they want to work with the town and make sure that everybody's happy as far as what they're offering. There's no specific time limits have been discussed.
Who are they going to meet with to get that put in place?
So we were hoping to, at the very least, get on the phone with Peter Collins and Jim Stewart, and then we were going to have Adams and myself, as far as maybe even Matt Rex on the call, just to discuss what kind of extension the town's looking for, you know, what the extension will cover, and any details in between.
All right, well, we've been talking about this now for months, so can we see that it's done in maybe the next 2 weeks?
Yep, if Peter can give us a date, I will, I'll have Adams on the call.
Peter?
I'll discuss it further with the town.
Okay, thank you, Peter. But it really needs to be done. We need it in writing right away. Go ahead, Peter O'Neill.
Can I ask Jim a question?
Go ahead.
Jim, when this test was done and it showed a drop, did the fuses blow at that point?
No,
So the machine must be doing the right thing at that point. If the drop happens and brings it back up, which spikes up to its normal voltage and amperage and whatever, then the fuse didn't blow these 2 days of testing, or the 2 times that it showed up on the testing. I don't know that it's an electricity issue. I think it's an equipment issue.
I went back and I reviewed my alarm logs and everything else for that particular day to see if, I had had any issues, if any alarms had come in, if anything had shut down, and I had no problems on that day, December 26th date.
Okay. Well, I just think that the electricity is fine. Again, I'm no engineer, never claimed to be. But I think the electricity is fine. Or why doesn't some of the heating systems and other buildings that we own downtown have that same problem? Because if it's a system issue, electrical system issue, then why wouldn't it show up at other buildings? If the mass electric lines are dropping voltage or spiking voltage, I don't understand. Personally, I think it's an equipment issue.
All right, back to Peter.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, committee members, if there's nothing else on 5, we'll go to item 6.
Hold on 1 second, Peter. I did want to bring up our PayRec 33 and PayRec 34. PayRec 33 was approved, and we have not received any payment for that, and 34 wasn't approved. I think the last comments about that were they were waiting on responses from your side and the town. And, even the Rex aside, the difference between the last punch list and next is around $56,000 that we've completed in work. So at the very least, we'd be looking for that as a payment as soon as possible.
Peter, can you update us on what those invoices are?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Can you update us on what those invoices are and how much they're for?
Yeah, I'll check it with the town after this call to find out the status.
Okay.
That's all.
There is no other invoices to report this period. Item 6. Item 7, have scheduled the next meeting a month from now, which is the first Wednesday of March, which would be the 3rd, March 3rd.
Okay. Any comments in regards to that?
Fine by me.
Peter O'Neill is okay with that.
Jim?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that. Ian?
Ian left, I think.
Okay. All right. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything that we have then, correct?
Can I get a couple of things here? Let me just check my notes. Okay, I guess we've covered everything from last month's minutes. I just wanted to double check. I had some highlighted things, but we're good. I'm good, Al. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Second by Jim Stewart. Roll call vote. Dexter?
Aye.
Peter O'Neill?
Yes.
Jim Stewart?
Aye.
Al Gordon, yes. Thank
Stay
you,
warm, everybody.
We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.